Billions of tons of coal are burned annually to power our lives. In the United States, 40% of electricity production comes from this toxic, outdated, and rapidly dwindling non-renewable energy source. Coal is critical to sustaining the excesses of American production and consumption, but it is powering our disintegration as well. From mining to burning to disposal, coal is wreaking havoc on our health and our planet. Why are we still reliant on such an outdated industry when there are alternative energy sources? What makes it a danger to our health and the environment? And what is all this talk about clean coal? We are here to clear the CO2 concentrated air and give you the coal hard facts. Back in the days of the Industrial Revolution, coal was a critical energy source that drove much of the infrastructural and economic development in the United States. It was introduced as a generator of electricity in 1892 when an Edison plant was built in New York City. And by the mid-20th century, coal had become the leading fuel for generating electricity in the country. The steady rise of coal-generated electricity shifted to a decline in 2007, as natural gas and alternative renewable energy sources became more readily available and environmental regulations became more stringent. Despite this decline, however, the U.S. still relies too heavily on this dirty and diminishing energy source. And it has damaging repercussions on the environment, public health, and the global economy. So what exactly is wrong with coal?
It's hard to believe that nearly 40% of our country's electricity still comes from coal, a dirty, outdated energy source. Coal not only causes health problems, but it's also the main contributor to climate disruption. Just how bad is coal? In mountaintop removal mining, coal companies clear-cut forests and literally blow the tops off mountains to get the coal. This process dumps millions of tons of waste into our streams and poisons our drinking water. But mining coal is only the beginning. Burning coal generates smog, which can cause asthma attacks, chest pains, and breathing problems. In fact, 1 out of 10 children in the U.S. suffers from asthma, and it's the #1 reason kids miss school due to illness. The pollution from burning coal leads to 12,000 emergency room visits and more than $100 billion in health costs every year. Coal pollution also contains toxic mercury that damages the nervous system and is especially dangerous for babies and young children because it can cause developmental problems. Mercury rains down into our oceans, rivers, and lakes, contaminating our fish and seafood. And even after coal is burned, the waste that's left over is bad for our health. Each year, coal plants generate more than 140 million tons of toxic waste called coal ash that's stored in thousands of pits across the country. Enough toxic waste to fill more than 400,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Living near a toxic coal ash pit can be worse for kids' health than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Is cheap, immediate energy from a non-renewable energy source worth the long-term health problems, risky extraction practices, and environmental damage? Fossil fuel companies all over the globe want you to think so.
You're looking at 50% of our electricity. Coal. It's the resource that generates half of our electricity at 1/3 the cost of most other fuels. It's the fuel that powers our way of life. Learn more about America's Power at americaspower.org.
This Australian ad campaign is just one example of ways companies attempt to glamorize coal and distort public perception.
This can provide endless possibilities. It can create light and jobs, delivering $6 billion in wages for Australians. It produces steel and powers our homes, as well as our economy, injecting $40 billion each year. And it can now reduce its emissions by up to 40%. It's coal. Isn't it amazing what this little black rock can do?
Coal man is a jolly, happy soul. He's abundant here in America, and he helps our economy roll. Frosty, the coal man's getting cleaner every day. He's affordable and adorable, and his workers keep their pay. There must have been some magic in clean coal technology, for when they looked for pollutants, there was nearly none to see. Oh, Frosty, the coal man, is a jolly, happy soul. He's abundant here in America, and he helps our economy roll. Thumpity thump thump, thumpity thump thump, look at Frosty go. Thumpity thump thump, thumpity thump, towards energy independence we go.
Politicians that are monetarily tied to these fossil fuel companies are part of the effort to support the coal industry and distract from its health and environmental risks.
That's how I power my... Let me, Chris, the Center for Disease Control agrees with Harry Reid. Here's what they have put out on their own website. Transportation-related pollutants, they say, are one of the largest contributors to unhealthy air quality. Many of these common air pollutants, respiratory irritants, aggravate asthma. Recent research findings are beginning to point to potential link between air pollutants and the initial onset of certain respiratory conditions. He's talking about the very kinds of things that are used now, like, coal-powered energy and also, gas and oil. It leads to pollution and it causes disease. Is there any question that Harry Reid was accurate when he said that?
Let's distill what he said sensibly here. We know, that pollution has continued to drop steadily for 4 decades. Asthma has continued to rise. We know that air pollution is not causing the asthma incidences. However, wait a second, Alan. Fossil fuels don't make us sick. Fossil fuels make us wealthy. And wealthier is healthier. Wealthier is cleaner. It is not the wealthy countries. In the extent that it creates wealth, yes, because it is not wealthy countries
not the wallet
Alan, I'm going to answer your question, okay? The wealthier countries do not despoil the environment. It is the poor countries. You can look that up. What would Nevada be without 90% of its electricity, which is filed by fossil fuels? Are you telling me, Chris, that coal is good for the air, good for the environment? Oil is good for the environment? Actually, we are burning things cleaner than ever before. Our air pollutants continue to drop 4 decades in a row. Bill Clinton's EPA had trumpeted this when she left office. Did everything suddenly reverse? No, not at all. Wealthier is healthier. Wealthier is cleaner.
Michael, I can't believe they're making the argument, A, that drilling is going to reduce prices anytime soon, which our own energy department says it will not, and that coal and oil are good for the environment.
In the United States, coal mining is a livelihood and the predominant economy in many communities. Miners are defending the industry, believing their livelihoods are at risk because of the more stringent regulations imposed by the Obama administration.
The coal industry's had a big effect on my life. My grandfather was a coal miner, my father was a coal miner, my wife, her father, her grandfather, her uncle, they're all coal miners. Coal is the largest driving force in this economy, and it's a job that I can earn an honest living, and I feel good about it. Unfortunately, over the past few years, coal's gotten a bad name. Yes, we got to look at the positives and the negatives of using coal, but we need to do it from a standpoint of maximizing human well-being and not human impact. Have you ever wondered why in developing countries they don't have the same water and air quality that we do? That's because affordable and abundant energy dramatically improves environmental quality and climate safety. That's what I want for my daughter, and that's what I want for her kids. I work with some of the hardest working men and women you'll find anywhere in this country. And when you come home from work and you turn on the television and there's your commander-in-chief talking about how he's going to bankrupt the people that you work for, that's really disheartening. That affects the livelihood of my coworkers, and their kids. So, thanks to the benefit of coal, I can raise my daughter in a clean and safe community. If you really think about it, there's a large number of benefits to using coal as an energy source. We could jumpstart our economy. We could create millions of jobs and lower the cost of living for everyone. Energy freedom and the use of coal can make a real difference in America. Coal can make America great again.
Communities' reliance on the coal industry is important to consider. But still, coal mining is a dangerous practice that results in dozens of workplace deaths each year and shortens lifespans. The economies of mining towns could shift to the manufacturing of renewable energy technologies, which offers safer employment. Not only is it safer, investments in renewable energy or energy efficiency have actually been shown to create far more jobs than equal investments in fossil fuel industries. And the U.S. solar industry alone is overtaking the coal mining sector with higher employment figures.
What coal miners need is a healthy alternative, a decent income, a good job that would be less threatening to their health and welfare. And that could be provided by local, state, or federal authorities if there were really the commitment to do that. It is not necessary to support the coal company with profits in order to help the coal miners. We can and should switch to other forms of energy generation that do not have these bad consequences. That would employ people. That's really not a problem. The solar energy industry in the United States today, which only accounts for 1% of all electricity, already employs more people than the coal business in the United States does. So if you were actually concerned about jobs, you would move more into solar energy, for example, than you do now, because it would provide more jobs there than would be lost if solar replaced coal. And the same is true for wind energy and so on in terms of jobs.
Clean coal. You've heard a lot about it. So let's take a tour of the state-of-the-art clean coal facility. Amazing! Machinery's kind of loud, but that's the sound of clean coal technology. And while burning coal is one of the leading causes of global warming, the remarkable clean coal technology you see here changes everything. Take a good long look. This is today's clean coal technology.
You may have heard about something called clean coal technology. It's been a hot topic as the country tries to strike a balance between protecting the environment and protecting the coal industry's interests. But is clean coal a legitimate technology or just the next marketing ploy of the coal industry? Here's how clean coal, essentially carbon capture and filtration, works.
There are two major types of clean coal technologies. First, there's gasification, and the process looks like this. Basically, it turns coal into gas vapor and removes impurities. There are successful gasification plants in the US, Europe, and Japan that do turn a profit. But surprise, it's more expensive. About 20% more expensive, which is why the utility companies don't want to make them. And speaking of expensive, there's a second clean coal technology, carbon capture and sequestration. This process of taking the CO2 that results from burning coal, compressing it, and injecting it deep into the porous rock of the earth. There are a couple of pilot programs in Europe and Japan, but none in the US. So, what's the problem? Well, when you pump CO2 into rock, it displaces the water that's already there. It's got to move somewhere, so you get unpredictable gas seepage. CO2 is also buoyant when it's pumped into the earth, so you can count on it spreading about 15 miles around the injection point. When CO2 comes into contact with some types of water, it can create carbonic acid that eats away at the surrounding rock. Even if that doesn't happen, there are serious groundwater contamination issues that need to be considered. And the amount of CO2 that we're talking about is billions of tons. In essence, this is a big experiment. So cross your fingers, folks. It's like a landfill inside the earth.
Together, we are going to start a new energy revolution, one that celebrates American production on American soil.
Joining us now, Bill Nye, the science guy. Bill, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Could you start with what is coal and what is clean coal?
Coal is ancient swamp that's been dried out and compressed. So when you burn it, you're burning ancient plant material and putting carbon dioxide that's been sequestered under the Earth's crust, the soil, for hundreds of millions of years. You're putting it back in the atmosphere about 1 million times faster than it was created. Clean coal is, we argue about this, it's just a misnomer. You're making carbon dioxide, which is causing the world to warm faster than it ever has warmed in history. And this will have tremendous consequences for everyone in the world. Clean coal is a myth. I know the previous president referred to it as well.
The U.S. government has aggressively funded clean coal projects for years with billions in taxpayer dollars, but it is still years away from being commercially viable. It's clear that clean coal is neither a legitimate technology nor a solution to our energy needs. So what is?
Good morning. I want to thank the Secretary General for organizing this summit and all the leaders who are participating. That so many of us are here today is a recognition that the threat from climate change is serious, it is urgent, and it is growing. Our generation's response to this challenge will be judged by history. For if we fail to meet it boldly, swiftly, and together, we risk consigning future generations to an irreversible catastrophe.
Farming
The Earth has been our home for billions of
cause
years.
global
But
temperatures to
fossil fuels and
surge.
greenhouse gas emissions
Rising sea
continue to
levels
threaten
will
the health
put
and
coasts
wildlife
and
of our
low-lying
planet.
islands at risk.
Non-renewable energy
Severe
sources currently
droughts
control the
and
monopoly for
superstorms
energy
will
consumption
become
around the
more
world.
frequent.
But thankfully, for our
And
future
1 in
generations,
6
the
of
United
Earth's
Nations has a
species
plan to make
will
climate
be
change a
threatened.
legend of the past.
Je regarde la salle, je vois que la réaction est positive, je n'entends pas d'objection. L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
At the Paris Climate Conference in December 2015, 195 countries agreed to the world's first universal action plan to tackle climate change by limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius. This historic achievement was just the beginning. Now, every country must turn their promises into action. Human activities such as burning fossil fuels, livestock farming, and deforestation cause global temperatures to surge. Rising sea levels will put coasts and low-lying islands at risk. Severe droughts and superstorms will become more frequent. And 1 in 6 of Earth's species will be threatened. This is why, in Paris, countries committed to tackle climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and taking measures to adapt to the unavoidable impacts of climate change. This will require a worldwide economic transformation, unlocking the potential of renewables, making agriculture more sustainable, decarbonizing transport, and redesigning the electricity market. This transition will bring new opportunities to industries, investors, and innovative companies. And the more a country does, the more its citizens will benefit through job creation, smarter products, cleaner air, and more secure energy supplies. Making this happen will be a challenge. We all have a role to play. More than 10,000 companies, investors, regions, cities, and civil society organizations are already taking action across the globe. But climate change-related events are already happening more frequently. All countries are affected and face the task of building up their resilience to environmental changes. One thing is certain: international cooperation is key to reach a global climate solution. Developed countries have committed to helping others with technology, strengthening institutions, and also finance. Other countries, including emerging economies, are also increasingly providing support to the most vulnerable nations. The European Union is already putting its Paris commitment into action and will reduce its emissions by at least 40% by 2030. Since 1990, the EU has already reduced its emissions by almost a quarter, while at the same time growing its economy by almost 50%. The Paris Agreement gives us a global action plan to fight climate change. By working together, we can build a safer and more sustainable world for us all and for future generations.
Thanks to the Paris Agreement, countries across the world are racing against the clock to develop clean energy solutions to air and water pollution.
As the UN Climate Change Summit comes to a close, one European nation stands out for the strides it has taken to convert from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources, like wind and solar power. That country is Denmark, which aspires over the next 35 years to become the first nation on Earth to run completely on clean energy, including for transportation. In tonight's signature segment, we begin on Samso Island, just west of Copenhagen, to see how that plan is taking effect. NewsHour special correspondent Lisa Desai reports.
The island of Samso lies 9 miles off Denmark's mainland. It's mostly a farming community and home to 4,000 residents who are part of a cutting-edge experiment. Good morning. Soren Hermansen is the man most responsible for putting Samso on the map as the world's first island powered 100% by renewable energy. The transformation began in the late 1990s.
The question would always be, does it cost more than what we have today? Or how do we finance it? Or is it technically difficult? Will it change my daily routines and stuff like that? Okay, so all the smart house thing here is controlled by a computer.
As the director of the SAMSO Energy Academy, Hermansen hosts visitors from around the world, explaining how SAMSO went from being entirely dependent on imported oil and coal for its electricity to running fully on wind and solar energy.
It's producing about 6,000 kilowatt hours per year, which is the same as we consume in total per year.
Oh, right. The main source of power on the island is 21 wind turbines, 11 onshore and 10 offshore.
The electricity is all produced from wind turbines today, which was a great big effort because, I mean, some of the islanders, they kind of had this image that, wow, maybe the island will flip over.
Right.
Because it's so big.
Overall, the island produces more energy than it consumes and transmits the excess by cable to mainland Denmark. SAMSO uses the profit it makes from selling the excess, about $3 million last year, to improve its energy infrastructure.
Plan for the world's largest floating wind farm gets the green light. Scotland's notoriously strong winds could pan out to be a blessing in disguise after the Scottish government recently approved plans for a floating wind farm. Existing offshore wind turbines, which need to stand on concrete or steel foundations, are expensive if anchored to depths greater than 40 meters. Instead of anchoring turbines to the sea floor, Statoil, a Norwegian energy company, plans to build a floating wind farm 15 miles off the coast of Peterhead, Scotland. 5 floating wind turbines will be installed offshore. The base of each will consist of a floating steel tube filled with ballast. Each wind turbine, measuring about 258 meters high, is then tethered to the seafloor 90 meters down by 3 moorings. Because they're not actually attached to the seabed, these types of wind turbines are cheaper than traditional ocean turbines and can be placed in deeper waters. Each of the 5 wind turbines will have a 6-megawatt capacity. Together, the 5 will be able to power an estimated 20,000 homes. In 2014, Scotland generated 11,740 gigawatt-hours of power from wind, which nearly made up a third of Scotland's total energy consumption. Statoil's goal with this $232 million pilot project is to demonstrate global market potential for turbines.
It's a view usually only enjoyed by tourists, but now Parisians can glide past world-famous monuments as they commute across the capital. City officials are adding boats to the public transport network. Anyone with a Paris transport pass can now travel on the River Seine as easily as they would by metro or bus. It's part of a campaign to improve Paris's air quality by fighting vehicle pollution.
So we're working on all the means of transportation in order to create a new mobility in Ile-de-France, in the Paris region. So it means using the river, using bicycles, using cable transportation.
Pollution in Paris often reaches dangerously high levels. Heavy traffic is mainly to blame. The World Health Organization says air pollution kills nearly 40,000 people prematurely in France each year, more than 6,000 in the capital. Mayor Anne Hidalgo has already banned cars from riverside roads and launched a shared bike and electric car scheme, but she says tougher measures are needed.
This road will be made less car-friendly. The number of lanes for motorists will be reduced to make more room for a two-way bike path. And there's also a plan for a new electric bus service which would run parallel to the river and give people a greener way to travel.
This offshore wind, with all this investment, is a kind of Germany's moon landing.
Our company is spending around €1 billion in constructing this 295 megawatt project, enough to power 300,000 homes. So yeah, it's a big revolution in Europe right now.
Off the coast of northern Germany, in the frigid waters of the wind-lashed North Sea, a vast array of massive wind turbines is being constructed to feed the booming German economy.
These machines are huge
and they are, 100 meters hub height, and the tip height, that means up to the blade tip, is 150 up to 200 meters. This is big.
Well, offshore is actually part of the so-called German Energiewende, the energy change into renewables. And the German politics decided a couple of years ago to really go full force into offshore. And so since then, 10, 11 projects emerged in the German Bay. They are all sort of in different stages and about to be completed now within the next couple of months to actually produce energy to support this Energiewende.
The Energiewende, or energy transition, is arguably the most ambitious national effort to combat global warming on the planet. It involves not just offshore wind, but also onshore wind, as well as solar, biogas, and other renewable sources. While it is still in its early stages, the German energy transformation has made impressive advances. In the first quarter of 2014, renewable energy sources contributed 27% of the country's electricity demand, more than double the U.S. number.
At ground level, in their outsized elegance, they look like the components of some futuristic space complex. But they're the blades that will spin atop America's first offshore wind turbines. This demonstration project, a decade in the making, borrows renewable energy technology from land-based wind farms and takes them out to sea, in a patch of the Atlantic Ocean off tiny Block Island, Rhode Island. Jeff Grabowski is the CEO of the company behind the project, Deepwater Wind.
We lift all this equipment about 450 feet up in the air and bolt it together.
And these are like 25 tons a piece or some big
29
number.
tons
29
each blade.
tons a piece, yeah.
And each blade is about 241 feet long.
Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo came to the Port of Providence to take a victory lap.
It means cleaner source of energy. Ultimately, it means lower cost of energy. I love that. I love it when Rhode Island is the first.
The first to start an industry in the U.S. that's already established and growing in Europe, where some 3,000 offshore turbines supply power for more than 7 million homes.
Even underdeveloped countries such as Morocco and Bangladesh are creating electricity using wind and solar power. Thanks to these environmentally green technologies, villages in southern Bangladesh that have never had electricity now can experience luxuries that first world countries have enjoyed for decades, including electric light, heat, and access to the internet.
But Bangladesh has been mostly ignored in national press when it comes to solar power, and there are huge things happening with solar power in Bangladesh. In July, the World Bank offered to the Bangladeshi government a $78 million loan to finance almost 500,000 solar home systems. Assuming that there's 5.6 people per household in Bangladesh, I know it sounds really high, but that's actually average there. That's solar power for about 2.7 million people. That's only the beginning. By the end of 2010, Grameen Shakti had already installed 500,000 home solar power systems. Using the same per-person household math, that's another 2.9 million people.
Manpura is one of the farthest inhabited islands in Bangladesh. And like many areas of the South Asian country, it's not connected to the electricity grid. But the sun has saved the day. 22 large solar panels in this field have created something known as a mini-grid. Electricity generated is stored in batteries. Enough power to run the community's market. Entrepreneurs, even the electric motorized rickshaws that ply the island. Eventually, the mini-grid will provide 177 kilowatts of low-cost electricity to 500 households and 179 businesses on the island. Solar is a practical source of energy in Bangladesh, a country divided by waterways and geographic barriers that make traditional power plants and electrical grids expensive.
On the edge of the Sahara, the Moroccan city of Ouarzazate is known as the door to the desert. But it's also set to become a gateway to Morocco's energy future. The Noor Solar Power Station is a vast complex. Phase 1 opened earlier this year. It uses 500,000 mirrors across 450 hectares, producing 160 megawatts of electricity. When all 4 phases are completed, it's hoped the plant will generate enough electricity to power almost 2 million homes, reducing carbon emissions by an estimated 760,000 tonnes per year. Morocco's reliance on energy imports prompted the new direction. By 2030, the country hopes to generate 52% of its energy requirements through renewables.
We know what needs to be done. We know that our planet's future depends on a global commitment to permanently reduce greenhouse gas pollution. We know that if we put the right rules and incentives in place, we will unleash the creative power of our best scientists and engineers and entrepreneurs to build a better world. And so many nations have already taken the first step on the journey towards that goal. But the journey is long, and the journey is hard, and we don't have much time left to make that journey. It's a journey that will require each of us to persevere through setbacks and fight for every inch of progress, even when it comes in fits and starts. So let us begin. For if we are flexible and pragmatic, if we can resolve to work tirelessly in common effort, then we will achieve our common purpose. A world that is safer, cleaner, and healthier than the one we found, and a future that is worthy of our children. Thank you very much.